So, ha ha ha, today is 420. Um, I I don't really care, but I know there's some people who care, so I guess congrats to them. But I did not record on the 18th because I just got distracted and busy, and then yesterday, like, was just a hard day. So today I am recording. Um, as far as trans stuff goes, I have still been using the oil and still not had any balding or receding of hairline come back. So I am very happy about that. I do want to, you know, encourage anyone who tries putting oil, do not think just because it's like an essential oil or something like that that it's totally 100% safe. That is a misconception. You can totally put too much oil of certain types on your skin and it get absorbed and it be like not okay. So just be careful, like read about stuff and learn about stuff before you do something. Talk to someone who knows what they're doing first, but um, yeah, it's definitely working. I'm very grateful. I'm very happy that my hairline receding has stopped. And yeah, I really can't complain. My hair up here is a lot thicker now. It used to be um like I could see the thinning like pretty badly. I could see through some of that, and now it's like fully thick again, and like no matter what angle I look, I can't see down to the skin anymore. So yay, that's good. um, the appointment that I had with my urethral lengthening specialist surgeon, basically it turns out that they got someone imported from, or imported, brought over. They hired them, for the next year or two, that worked in San Francisco uh, with like surgeons down there, like Dr. Chen and stuff. So they're very excited to be up here doing stuff, and that's cool. That is cool to me that I get another. Basically, I'll have two surgeons who are specialists for urethral lengthening and bottom surgery and all of that stuff. Doing that along with my actual surgeon who is going to do the real bottom surgery, shaping, and do the real, like, masculinization part. So I've basically got three surgeons who will be doing stuff, and they all seem nice. They're all nice dudes, so that's good. um, but I talked to both of them at my appointment, one at a time, and then they were both there. And I am pretty set on urethral lengthening. The biggest con to doing urethral lengthening that I could tell, besides, the pain of a complication, was that it would delay other surgeries coming after. And what that means is delaying me getting a prosthetic. It's basically a little pump that goes inside. A lot of elderly people get it, or people who've been injured in like military stuff or things like that. But it basically makes it so that you can become erect. So after the phalloplasty is done, a year later, you come in and get that. Well, if there's complications, no matter what, all stuff has to be done, and then it's a year later, and you get the pump. So that's the biggest downgrade or whatever for complications besides the pain of it. But that's still worth it to me. Um, I've already had to accept and come to terms with, even though that's been very hard for me, with the fact that I will not have all my surgeries done by 40. Um, the delay for this previous surgery was just so astronomically longer than what it was supposed to be. I was supposed to be able to get that surgery after like 2 months, and instead it was like 8 months. And it's been a trip. And then I, got my stuff for starting electrolysis, but I can't start instantaneously because of the situation with electrolysis, which I'm about to get into. So I've had to accept that it's not going to be by 40. I will have my first phalloplasty surgery hopefully by 40, which will mean by 40 I'll have some sort of a shaft. It won't be, fully functional, and I might not have any sensation yet, but I'll have it. So at least there's something. I've been trying to hold on to that. I've had my grieving, and every once in a while I do get like really sad for a few minutes about it. It feels like every single month that passes by that I'm not past the surgeries and able to just focus on other things fully and give them like real attention is just really really difficult for me. Like it's really painful for me. I want to feel like I can have sex the way that my brain sees me having sex, like physically actually do that, um, instead of makeshift versions of that. I would like to be actually like stop having to wear like underwear with bulges sewn into them and things like that, and actually just not have to think about things like that anymore and stress about things like that anymore. See, and quite genuinely, the biggest thing is I want to feel good in my existence. I want to feel comfortable with my body and comfortable with how I am. I was watching some information about like basically trans studies from a psychological scientific perspective, and there's not a single definitive study, and even internationally, period, on trans stuff, which I found very interesting. Um, there's some pretty generally accepted stuff, but it is generally accepted because of like statistical analysis. There's not actually been a long term with tons of follow up on a large like full control group like study done on trans stuff. And part of it is because people are scared of there being medical stuff for trans things, and part of it is because people are scared that there won't be. And there's a lot of debate about what to do about that kind of stuff. So it's very whatever. But the running theories tend to be that it's more medical, for the majority of trans stuff. What's interesting is the way that it was explained. I found very very interesting. It was that it should be called sexual dysphoria, not gender dysphoria, because there's a ton of basically a ton of confusion that happens with stuff because you can't you can't get specific. Part of the reason that intersex people get tossed in with just trans people, even though it's not the same situation, is because it's all just so generalized and just a big hodgepodge of a salad of here's a bunch of different issues all clumped together. Someone who has, say, a more gender leaning dysphoria that's truly just about gender and not about sex, can lean more into stuff like gender expression and their presentation socially and things like that, whereas a person who is genuinely just so completely disturbed by the mental like structure that they have for themselves versus what their physical body actually is, even if no one else can see it, no one else can interact with it, but they still know, I still know, like their actual sex, like their actual sex is part of the issue. It's not just a gender issue, because gender and sex are not the same thing. And I thought that was very very interesting that there's so much struggle with even making that kind of a differentiation on things. A lot of like the studying and the science on it is just not in depth because you're dealing with very, very painful emotions. You're dealing with human suffering, and you don't want to make the suffering worse, but at the same time, it's important to understand it, or else you can't find like genuine solutions, and not everyone needs the same kind of solution. Like, I cannot imagine personally going the rest of my life presenting as male but not having a penis. Like, that to me, that would be like non-functional for me personally. And so I feel like it makes sense to say that I would have a sexual dysphoria. It's not just a gender dysphoria. But that's not an actual used terminology. That's just something that they were saying, as an example of something that would be a suggestion to help alleviate confusion. But like, being someone who was born with characteristics from both male and female, it is a whole different ball game dealing with trans issues. And yet I'm very much just tossed in the general population of trans stuff. Um, I didn't get to choose how I was born or that I was born with abnormalities. And there are people who would argue, oh, well, the female parts were just as valid as the male parts, but the male parts were what was instantly denied me, at least externally, was actively. I mean, I was outright punished. um, so the male things were what was shoved down or whatever, and I was intentionally raised to try to be as girly as possible, but I wasn't a girl. And as soon as doctors could look inside my body, it was very, very obvious that I wasn't a girl. Um, but that didn't happen until I was an adult. And, you say, oh, we don't want gender affirming care for children. Well, first of all, children can't have surgery anyway. That's literally illegal. But say you want to delay like hormones and do puberty blockers or something like that. Um, it would have helped me tremendously. It would have been like night and day for me personally. But I realized that that's not true of every single person, and it's such an individual experience being trans. It shouldn't be as easy of a generalization as it is. Um, my my personal experience with struggling so much and trying to come to terms with that it was even okay to feel male, um, it was a very, very hard thing for me. It was very difficult. And it took me a long time. It took me years to accept from the first time that a doctor ever told me, hey, I see some stuff going on here that doesn't make sense to me. Um, Unless it's this or this. And it's like, I can't hear that. Uh, Bye. And I just spent years, like, unable to process. And if there had been a more clear communication and I had had more understanding, I wish I could have done that so much. I hopefully would have been able to process better. But the fact that the information is so new, like we've had, no, it being implemented that you shouldn't cut children when they're, young or toddlers, when they're first born and stuff, when they're born intersex since like 1996. And we still know so freaking little about like kids who need that kind of wait and see care, and they need to be like loved and accepted and supported, and even studying them once they get into adulthood. I volunteer if some sort of person wants to, like, I don't know, learn my life story. You can watch my vlog. I've told almost everything in it. But even besides that, none of this is edited. Like, this is just me talking to a camera because it helps me process my thoughts and my feelings. So, use my information if you want. You can even try to like reach out to me or something. I volunteer. You can start studying with me, but there needs to be understanding. I am I am more progressive towards solutions and understanding than I am inhibited by fears of, well, what if not everyone has medical reasons for care? I am I am not intimidated by that kind of fear mongering because, quite frankly, avoiding the situation isn't helping anything. I mean, they just literally passed laws banning trans girls from sports. Like, it, the don't say gay, you know, it's not actually called that, but it's the nickname, bill in Florida just got expanded to high school. You're not allowed to have sexual education even in high school? Really? Like, it's ridiculous. Like, it's crazy. It's not okay. Trans people exist. Like, you have to at some point accept that certain people exist, whether you want them to exist or not, whether you believe they exist or not, whether you're accepting of their existence or not. It you can't say, man, I hate mosquitoes, and just pretend mosquitoes don't exist. Eventually, you're going to encounter a mosquito. You might try to avoid places mosquitoes are. You might try to, pretend the word mosquito's not in your terminology, but a mosquito is eventually going to encounter you. It's gonna happen. You got to stop pretending things that you don't like aren't real. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's not real. And lies, they rip out under your feet. They tear you apart. They can drop kick your life. Truth, it might be a little hard, but it's not going to do that to you. Truth is just straightforward, direct. Like, lies are like an emotional frenzy, and the truth is very calm, calculated, and scientific. And you gotta get to a point, at some point in society, where the lies and the misinformation and the spreading of deception is not something that you're dealing with, and you're avoiding things so much that you're actually perpetuating the problems. Looking for a solution might be difficult, and it might make it mean that there has to be more specific terminology for things, categorization of things. Certain people qualify for different types of medical care under insurance. Yeah, I mean, that stuff absolutely can happen. That's absolutely true. But it means that there's also an opportunity for solutions and things that can really help people, like actually substantially, scientifically verifiably help people. And that's huge. And it also makes it a lot harder for people to pass arbitrary, stupid, idiotic laws when it's like a verifiable fact for the reasons why this is necessary. Like, they're just crazy dumb laws. Um, it's just absurd. But the point is I don't just identify as trans just because I've had to be in transition. I I was born intersex, and I've had to transition due to that, and there's so much more about me, and I'm so much more of a person than just trans. Like, that's just not the biggest identifier for me in my own mind. I much more identify as male than as trans. I much more identify as, you know what? As much as someone could say, oh, well, weren't your girl parts just as valid as the boy parts? Couldn't you just have been a girl? Um, why are you jumping to that conclusion? Why weren't the male parts just as valid? Like, why wasn't I just a boy the whole time? Like, there's a part of me, like, as an intersex person who feels like very attached to that, who feels like very validated by the fact that, you know, there was a physical part of me that was male the whole time. It wasn't all just the way that I saw myself. It wasn't all just in my, you know, behaviors and my mental, you know, image of myself, but there was actual like physical characteristics to support that. And in reality, like scientifically, if we get medical about it and take the emotions out of it, the female parts and the male parts, none of them was useful for reproduction. None of them was a fully formed, actualized sex organs that you could say are, yep, here we go, here's the full. Like, I was born sterile. Like, there's no way around that. Like, you can say just as equally, oh, well, the female parts were not very functional. Well, just as validly, the male parts weren't that functional either. Like, I have to be on hormone replacement for the rest of my life. And I would have had to, with or without getting, reproductive parts removed, because I didn't have fully functional hormone, you know, growth inside of my own body anyway. Like, I just couldn't produce enough by myself. So, I'm in a situation where I have to look at things from both sides. Like, I see the pain, and I see the people just wanting to be able to express themselves and identify themselves and choose how they're seen and perceived and be comfortable, be actually comfortable in society and with other people, and they want to feel good about their life instead of miserable about their life. And I also see the like functionality of finding actual medical scientific bases for things and being able to have definitive definitions instead of confusing definitions, and being able to say there's differences between these different types of situations instead of just grouping everything and everyone together. I I struggle a lot with what I what I think would be like the next steps, or what I would believe would be the next things they should do, scientists and psychologists and doctors and everything. But I will say what the average person should do is love and accept people. Just let people live. If they're not like physically assaulting someone in some sort of way, if they're not sexually assaulting someone in some sort of way, if they're not like going into your home and burglarizing it, just let them live. Let them exist. If they're not causing actual harm to you, like genuine harm, not just, oh, well, my beliefs are different, so religious harm. I'm talking actual harm to your reality, not just your beliefs or your feelings, but your actual reality, then just let them live. Don't put your own stuff on other people. That's the biggest thing I think is really interesting, is a lot of religious people that I'm related to and know, like, they really, really just do not want anyone to exist who does not believe the same as them. Like, they just do not accept that any of those people are going anywhere except hell. Like, they are very insistent on other people believing exactly like they do. And it's like there's so many different things to believe or to understand in the world. Having one set of beliefs and insisting that that's the only right way is just ridiculous. It feels like to me. Anyway, now that I've ranted a little, getting back to my own personal transition, I did get in contact with a place for electrolysis. It was hard. Apparently, electrolysis is very difficult because the majority of places are not actually accredited with insurance companies. And I can't afford to just pay out of pocket. And some places are like, oh, well, we'll write you a letter and then your insurance can reimburse you. Well, that doesn't work with Medicaid. Um, in the state of Washington, if you did not know this and you happen to live in Washington, it is required by law that trans care is covered. So even if you're on Medicaid, you're covered, but you have to go to somewhere that is accredited and covered by the Medicaid. I got a list from my insurance company of like dermatologists and stuff, but almost no dermatologists do electrolysis, which is just, again, strange. It's almost all like spas or beauty places or, things like that where you would have to pay out of pocket. They originally referred me to a hospital, but the hospital's just completely understaffed and they don't know when they're going to get staff. They just flat out have no clue. So I couldn't wait, like, rely on that. I've already had so many delays, it feels like that are just arbitrary and senseless. The scheduling systems in the hospitals and doctors and facilities and stuff here are just terrible. Like when I lived in New York, scheduling was way less bad than it is here. Scheduling is terrible here. And it seems like everyone, no matter what like system it's through, you could say, oh, I'm going to Swedish, or oh, I'm going to UW, or I'm going to CHC, or I'm going to, it doesn't matter. Whatever hospital system, whatever groups, whatevers, they all apparently use the same scheduling system because it's crap. They can't schedule out ahead. They can't load more than a little bit at a time. Like, it's really, really terrible. Truly bad. Like, the doctors themselves and the nurses themselves and all of that, awesome. Great people. The scheduling systems are just trash. Like, whatever systems they're using, they are paying way too much to use it. Anyway, I managed to find a place, and I even went on a trans group, like Facebook group for phalloplasty and stuff, because I'm going into getting phalloplasty, and I thought, well, my technically my girlfriend thought that would be helpful, and I even asked on there, and it was the same thing. I have to go to Olympia. I live in Seattle, and to get my electrolysis, I have to go all the way to Olympia. There's just nothing, no options. If you're on Medicaid, there's only a few places in the entire state that are actually accredited, and the rest of all of the quote-unquote electrolysis and hair removal and stuff is not actually, like, it's not actually being done by someone professional enough to work with insurance. Almost none of them work with insurance because almost none of them can. And the majority of trans people just give up and pay out of pocket. I cannot afford to do that. I literally cannot afford to do that. So instead, I have to drive to Olympia. The gas money is expensive, but it's still less than it would cost for me to pay out of pocket for electrolysis sessions. The other thing is, man, like, some of these places really are scam artists. How much it takes to get hair removal is partially dependent on where you're getting the hair removal. And it is not the same amount of time to get hair removal on an arm as it is, say, to get facial hair removal or to get genitalia removal. It's just not the same. So, yeah. Anyway, my surgeons all said that when my electrolysis looks about 80% done, to go ahead and call and get scheduled for my surgery. He also said very clearly, keep getting it all the way up until almost your surgery, because even if you do slightly extra or overkill or whatever, that's better than not doing enough. So yeah, there's that. It's 80% because it's going to take a few months for me to be able to actually get on the schedule, and during those few months I might get past 100% and get to like 110% or something, and that's not a bad thing. The more electrolysis, the better, because the only thing they're trying to keep is sensation. They only want to protect the nerves. They do not want any hair follicles, because that's fistula city and strictures, and that's the chances of complications go up. So it's really important to, as thoroughly as possible, get it. But I don't have to get rid of all my hair. I only have to go starting right here on the wrist. So all of this hair that comes up onto my hand stays, and then I only have to go down to like here on my elbow, so all the hair that's down here stays. Eventually, I intend to just put a tattoo on this arm. Um, I'm really frustrated with the whole tattoo thing because I have some pretty predominant ancestry, and unfortunately, a lot of my ancestry has been hijacked and commandeered by white supremacists, and that sucks. Like, I descend from druids, and my original desires were to go with druidic and Celtic knots and so on and so forth. And a bunch of that has been like taken over by a bunch of jerks, like just outright jerks. So, yeah, I thought about just literally putting Celtic knotting all the way up my arm. Um, that might not be so prudent because I do not in any way, shape, or form want to be associated with white supremacy. I just like that I came from druids and from like ancient Celtic warriors who unfortunately I literally came from a Scottish clan and an Irish clan that were constantly at war with each other and like slaying each other back in ancient history, like just clan warring it out. Um, I also come from like some indentured servitude and slavery and blah blah blah. But the slavery is all the way back to like Vikings. I'm not talking about the Americas. The Americas, it's indentured servitude, but those are two separate things. Do not listen to anyone who says that they're different or they're the same. They're not the same thing. But anyway, the point is I have a bunch of ancestry, and I thought, oh, I'll just put some ancestry on my arm, but freaking commandeering jerks. So I still intend to put like a tattoo on this arm to cover the scar, but you do have to wait. The surgeon said they recommend waiting 2 years after they take the skin graft off of my arm and use the donor site before putting a tattoo on it. So yeah, I will never have sensation in the middle of this arm after they take all of this. It will just go away. But I can at least not look like I have a big scar on it. So yeah, it might be like by the time I'm done with surgeries and I'm done with all the tattooing, I just want to be done with the surgeries as soon as possible. The tattooing, it can take a little longer if it needs to. It's not as big of a like priority of mine, but I'm hoping that I still can get done with all this stuff before 45. Because if I can get done with all of this before 45, then that means that I hopefully can like spend another 45 years of my life just done and focused on, again, other things in life besides just transition. I would really like to be able to do more than just transition. I would like to be able to really like invest in myself and settle into having like some property and taking care of the earth and being like a good steward of that property and like growing, the forest and protecting those trees and making sure they don't get logged and all of that. Like, I don't know. I just really, really, I have other aspirations and goals and things that I would like to do in life. Places I'd like to travel and cultures I'd like to see and foods I'd like to taste. um, you know, I would like to get through all of this and hopefully not need, you know, to worry about a bunch of health problems and stuff until I get old and gray. And this was it. And this was the big thing. And over the hump and into the rest of my life. Because life's not supposed to be this hard. I really genuinely believe that. It's not actually supposed to be this hard. Anyway, that's where I'm at with transition stuff. My first appointment to go to the electrolysis stuff is in May, in the middle of May, on May 17th. So if I record on May 18th, I will probably be talking about it. They did want copies of my letters, so I had to do 2 therapy letters and a doctor's letter to get my phalloplasty approval in the first place. Well, they wanted copies of the therapy letters, and my surgeon wrote a medical necessity letter, which is required so that Medicaid will cover it in the state of Washington. Your surgeon does need to write you a medical necessity letter. And they wanted copies of all of that so that when they go to submit everything, it's all covered and good to go, and everything can be happy. So, yeah, that's about it, though. I don't know how often my appointments will be or anything like that until after I go for the first time, get a full examination of my arm and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, next month, hopefully, we'll be all explaining what happened. Yeah.